Welcome back to the workshop, everybody. Your good friend Walter here. So glad you could be with me here today. I just wanted to say I don't need no stinking gym membership. I've been flattening this piece of beech, 4.5 inches thick, 17 inches wide, heart side up, knots and cracks. It's not even a year old yet, so it's still got a lot of moisture in it, but I wanted to give it another flattening. Boy, oh boy, I tell you, it gets the old pumper pumping. Look at those chips. You can even hear them falling on the floor. Not these little light fuzzy things. So, how flat is flat? How straight is straight? How flat do you need flat to be? Well, some of you who follow me on Facebook might know that I brought this in last fall, and I'm trying to see if it's even possible to make a workbench out of a green piece of timber right away. Well, the first answer is I didn't. It started splitting and cracking and warping and cupping. Thankfully, it hasn't really twisted. But the concept was, before the advent of dry kilns, power sawmills, and all the stuff that we have today, back in the 15th, 16th, 17th century, they worked primarily starting from green wood. Now, the concept of good, better, best, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, I don't care how you want to designate it, but there is always work that is good, meaning it gets the job done, and you get paid and you move on. So what would be considered something good in terms of timber? Well, you're building a timber frame house and you get the trees and you cut them down and you flatten the sides and you do mortise and tenon and fancy joinery and you put the thing up green. As it dries, some of the joints will get tighter, some settle, but once the exterior cladding gets put on and the interior cladding, it stiffens everything, and for centuries to follow, that timber frame will stand, and that is good. So, when it comes to workbenches, what do you really need for a workbench? A couple of logs on the ground and some sort of split half of a tree? Flatten it, and you've got a workbench. You drill some holes in it, and use some holdfasts. Okay? Drill some holes in your bench and use some holdfasts, and you're good to go. You now can do flooring and wainscoting and interior trim to a level of acceptance. So that would still be considered good. So if you're a traveling journeyman carpenter, that would be kind of the level of flatness that you would stay in pretty much all your life. What that would be is like I'm doing here. I come across, and once I get a cut that is straight, even if there's maybe a little pocket of light here or there, that's considered flat. Do the same thing in this direction to where every 18, 24 inches it's straight. That's flat enough. And as long as there's no really bow and twist in the surface, that is a flat surface. It could be out as much as the thickness of your shavings. Okay? And that goes with modern day sharpening too. Okay? It could be flat within that thickness. So what is that, a 64th, 32nd, something like that? When you're sharpening, if your stone grit is 100 grit, you will only be able to flatten to within 100 grit. So it's all relative. It's all relative. So that would be good. What would be better? Better would be to change this blade, work with timber that has seasoned. It has gone through 4 seasons for every inch of thickness. So this would need 5 years. 5 years of seasoning before I should even start working it. And even then, it's not furniture dry. It's not ready. You wouldn't build furniture out of this. It would be just for a bench top. Then I could flatten it, put a finer blade set in here, one with the tight set chip breaker, and I could smooth this out to probably within 2 or 3 thousandths of an inch. So that would be considered flat enough for most of your furniture makers. Today, we've got all these people going around talking about how flat a workbench should be. Well, you know what? It's as flat as you want to make it. But if you're dealing in solid timber, not laminated, solid, it's only going to be so flat because every few percent moisture change in the air, it's going to move from season to season to season. Twice a year, it's flat. The rest of the year, it's not flat. But it's all relative to the type of work you're doing. If you're working with wood that is 18 to 24 inches long, this is almost flat enough. I would tweak it a little bit this way. So if you're making boxes, or let's say you're making window frames, things like that, it's flat enough. If you're making moldings, you're going to put a sticking board on top of this anyhow. So that's a whole nother story. I've talked with a lot of people about this working green wood concept over the years. And I still say the apprentices would come in and they'd make primitive benches. They would take slabs like this and they would flatten them, upon which they would proceed to do their woodworking. So an apprentice would be building crates, would be roughing stock for their master. So they only had to be flat to the first level. And if they were not built into a solid workbench, let's say they just sat on sawhorses, after a year, these would get re-flattened and go on to a better worker. Or maybe the apprentice stays and he takes his bench and he re-flattens it. Now he builds a substructure. And that starts to become his. And he starts taking really good care of it. So now it starts getting from good to better. And maybe after a period of 10 years working in that shop, the timber would be seasoned, stable, flat, and he can take his best planes and smooth that out to as high a level as he wants, and that would be his permanent bench for the rest of his life. That's my interpretation of how life could be in the 14th, 15th, 16th century workshops. I don't think everybody went out and bought kiln-dried, seasoned, they wouldn't have kilns back then, but seasoned timbers that were, 10, 15 years old, although they did recycle a lot of timber and stone in the old days. It was expensive. You have labor invested in it. Like if you build a ship, you have labor in that ship. So if a ship wrecks, you collect all the timbers and you bring them up and you keep them dry, and when the next time you need a timber, that's the lumber yard you go look at because it's already seasoned. It's well seasoned. So that's my take on the topic. I got a little more flattening to do. I bet you I lost 5 pounds today. Head out to your shop. Go make some shavings. Walter out.